Okay.
Welcome everyone to another episode of Reality and You Foundation. Today we have with us the esteemed Dr. Charlotte Markley. Dr. Markley has been doing her research in eating behaviors, weight management, and body image. Since she has been writing about this in the US News from 2015. She's currently the psychology professor at Rutgers University and the founder of the Health Sciences Center. She has, I'm assuming, a lot of people training under her on eating disorders, body image, and weight management. Doctor, can you add certain things about your work? I have seen you have 2 books. I can see the pamphlet behind you.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think we should start talking about them.
Yeah, so I've been studying eating behaviors and body image for almost 25 years now, and I have written actually 4 different books. So the latest 2 are body image books for girls and boys. So the target readership is actually tween and teens, so young people, to try to get information about body image and eating behaviors and related mental health issues to young people before these issues become really lifelong chronic problems.
Right. So I'm just going to start off because I have a population. I basically see adults, but I do have a population of teenagers, who come in, and especially post the pandemic, we've seen a very sedentary lifestyle. We've seen lockdowns in my country for, 2 years. There were a lot of eating disorders that we saw that came up, especially body image. And once school has started, colleges have started, I think we are seeing more of that. So just to start off with the definition of, what would you define as body image?
Body image is a really complex construct. So I think a lot of people mistakenly believe that it's a superficial or really simple issue. But body image is much more than just how we think and feel about our bodies or our appearance. It's really related to our mental health in general, our health behaviors, even our interpersonal relationships. Yep. And I think it's best conceptualized as, how do you feel in your own skin? How comfortable are you with yourself? And we know when people don't have any sort of comfort or self-acceptance, that has really far-reaching consequences.
Right. So when you're looking at the teenage and through your books, maybe you can give us some knowledge. What are some of the, cases that you're seeing? What are some of the issues that are coming out in related to body image?
We do see body image manifest somewhat differently for girls and boys in terms of their concerns. So more often, if girls and women are concerned about their body image, they're going to change their behaviors to try to eat less or to exercise more. They may diet. They often, much more often than people realize, start to engage in disordered eating behavior. So maybe skipping meals, or cutting out certain food groups. Boys and men, sometimes their problematic body image issues seem to manifest as health behaviors that are just excessive. And so we see oftentimes like a lot of weightlifting or supplement use or even steroid use. And it's not always as easy to see, I think, those male concerns, because boys and men don't typically talk about being upset about their bodies or their appearance or themselves. They don't talk about their mental health as much in general. They just often engage in sort of excessive behaviors then. And that's really problematic as well.
So I think what is really highlighting here is that you are saying that body image is equally prevalent in men as it is in women.
Yes, I would say that body dissatisfaction is pretty comparable. We just don't talk about it as much when it comes to boys and men, and we're not looking for sometimes the right signs of this concern.
And doctor, when would you see the early signs? So if we are talking to parents, when do we start telling them that, maybe your child is having certain concerns or body image issues related to how they look?
I think a red flag often is, surprisingly, if they say they want to get healthy and they start avoiding all sorts of fun food like sweets or treats or sodas or things like that. Sometimes that's actually a red flag, even though it seems like a good thing that they're doing.
Right.
If that really persists, then that's something I'd watch out for. But even more, I think, serious is when young people start avoiding social situations. So if they don't want to go out with their friends, or they don't want to go out to dinner, or they don't want to do things because they either don't want to be around food or don't want to be around people who might comment on their appearance in some way. So when they start really curtailing their behaviors, that would be bringing them social support and wonderful parts of their lives, connecting with others, and we really have to step in. And it's always better, when possible, to talk to a professional, either a mental health or medical professional, than to wait and see. Because, as I'm sure you know, when disordered eating turns into a clinical eating disorder, the problem can become really chronic. It can become long-term, and it can become deadly. And so it's much better to step in and get help early, even if you're not sure it's necessary, than to wait a year and then have a really serious problem.
But I see a lot of parents, sort of ignore the red flags, as you mentioned, the disordered eating patterns, the social avoidance, because they sort of validate the whole looking thin and going on a diet. And, right now we have so many diets going on. We have the intermittent fasting, we have, and so, you're asked to look thin, you're asked to exercise, and in that pressure, is that pressure sort of okay? Is it not okay? Are we going the wrong way?
Yeah, I think we have to be really careful. Most cultures have valued thinness for many years now. But so much of our body size and shape is really determined by our genetics. And there are many of us who are not going to reach those beauty ideals that have been propagated for decades. And it's incredibly problematic, because the only way then people can feel like they're fitting into those cultural expectations is to engage in disordered behavior. Right. And that's not what we want, because we're setting young people especially up for really a lifelong struggle, sort of a battle against their biology, a battle against their body, instead of taking care of themselves. So, I'm a parent of 2 teenagers as well. I know how hard it is, right, when your child is struggling and you're not sure what to do. And I think too, acting on their struggles often feels like an admission of failure as a parent, like we didn't do something right. And that can be really hard, and it can feel devastating, but it can be really, really important just to seek help, even if you feel like it's proactive. And I think it's really valuable to teach young people also that it's okay to ask for help. We all need help at different times in our life, whether it be medical help, mental health help. We will all have health issues. None of us are going to make it through life without them.
I've sort of seen a pattern in some families where they validate being thin, like you said. The whole thinness culture is so strong that they validate the behavior of the person eating less and starving themselves, and then you get into the anorexia or the purging phase. You're also doing a lot of binge eating on weekends with your friends. So how do we sort of know that what is a strong boundary between the normality and that we are tipping towards a serious disorder?
I don't think there is a strong boundary.
Okay.
And I think that makes it really hard, because I think so much of what we've essentially valued in our cultures is disordered, right? I mean, something like intermittent fasting is really just another fancier name for disordered eating behavior. Skipping meals, not eating during certain parts of the day, even if you're hungry. It might lead to weight loss, but so does starving.
Right. So, would you say that, a certain section of the population is more sensitive? Are the teenage or the adolescents more sensitive to these issues? And in that, would there be a gender bias with females?
We know that adolescence is a high risk period for the development of mental health problems across the
Yeah.
board. And we know that body image concerns and disordered eating often start to emerge during adolescence. That's not to say that these problems don't emerge earlier or later in life, because they do. But puberty brings with it so many physical changes and also social and cognitive changes that young people experience. And so the combination of those factors really make it a vulnerable time for young people. And like I said, I do think that we see vulnerability in terms of both boys and girls. I just think that sometimes how boys act on their body image concerns is not as obviously indicative of a problem.
And you did mention about, the genetic composition of the body. I do know of people who have, body health, health issues such as thyroid, prolactin levels are high. Some of them may be on insulin, but they have an intense desire of losing weight and then get into a cycle of, not accepting themselves and, maybe get into disordered eating as well.
It can be really challenging because a lot of health problems are associated with our weight, right? Whether our weight is higher or lower. And this is, again, why I think that it's important to oftentimes get some medical or mental health professionals involved if you have concerns for yourself or your child or a friend or your partner, whoever.
So what would be some of the genetic causes or, the biological or the social causes for that matter leading to body image issues?
I mean, there really are so many different contributors to our body image, right? When we are born, we don't have concerns about our body. We don't actually even have a great sense of interoceptive awareness or awareness of our bodies. But as we get older, we start to become more in tune with social and cultural messages about how we're supposed to look, how we're supposed to behave. And so those messages often fuel negative thoughts about our bodies and ourselves more generally. So to a large extent, body image is socially constructed, right? We don't come out of the womb into this world dissatisfied with our bodies, and yet many of us end up there.
Right.
By the time we're, in late childhood. And so that's coming from more social influences.
And that's so true because it is always your peers teasing or bullying you and calling you names that are those traumatic experiences that are stuck throughout life.
Yes, and I can't tell you how many people I've talked to who will say that their disordered eating or their decision to change their health behaviors in ways that ended up being negative and really harmful started when a sibling teased them or a friend bullied them, or even a medical professional said, you need to lose weight. And they were like 8 years old, right? And so it was really not an appropriate time to make that sort of a recommendation.
So at this juncture, would there be a more sensitive way where a parent, of course, parents feel that, we are concerned about health issues coming up, and therefore this is our way of, sort of handling our child. Is there a more sensitive, appropriate way of talking about body image?
Yeah, I think we have to be really careful to be supportive of young people and to help them learn to appreciate body diversity, that most of us are not going to look like the images we see in the media, and that's okay. Our bodies, our physicality is not the most important thing about us. We should be nurturing and caring about other qualities that we embody. And we really, really want to be careful not to offer too much direct feedback about why are you eating that, or what are you eating, or what are you doing, or you need to be more active. Our kids are already getting those messages from the broader world. We do not need to also be a source of those sorts of negative messages, we really need to counter those messages and tell our kids that we love them unconditionally, that how they look is not the most important thing about them, that there are so many other qualities they have we care about more. And in terms of then feeding our kids and helping them maintain positive health behaviors, we can do this without a lot of conversation, without making them feel self-conscious about these things. It's possible, of course, to purchase relatively nutritious foods for your home and then just not make a big deal about it.
And, like you said, some people are more self-conscious than others. So how would we encourage, like you said, it's very validated in the world. We are getting those images right from everybody, from the world, to be thin, to be pretty, to be, a particular size. You will get a better partner. A prom night will be better if, you put a fit on that dress. Recently, I had some students who, were obsessing about the prom dress, and they had to lose weight through the exams. So how does, how do you sort of condition your mind to accept yourself?
I mean, I think some of us find this to be a lifelong journey, right? I think that we are constantly barraged with messages telling us that we shouldn't accept ourselves, that there's some diet plan or program or some product we can buy that will make us look better. And so we have to, I think, constantly be aware of that messaging and try to counter it. So do our own sort of cognitive behavioral therapy for ourselves and remind ourselves throughout our lives that, no, we don't need to lose weight for the prom or for a wedding or for a child's wedding or whatever it may be. We can buy a bigger dress and no one who loves us will care. And most people probably won't even notice, right? That we can buy a bigger or a different dress and move on with our life, right? We have so much more to offer the world than just a small body size.
Right. And, with body image, we talk a lot about body shaming. So can you talk about incidents of body shaming that can be really, really traumatic?
Yeah, I definitely have young people especially talk to me about feeling shamed. And like I said, sometimes that stays with people for the rest of their life. It's often really traumatic and devastating. And oftentimes people think they're joking or they're really well-intentioned. It may even be a parent, teasing someone about having some baby fat still. I don't know if you use that expression. We use that expression in the States a lot. Yeah, some baby fat. And then, if you're 12 and your parents saying, oh, look at how cute your baby fat is, 12-year-olds don't
like that.
That's cute anymore. Right. And so we have to be careful. And young people often are just not thoughtful about it because they're young. They don't always think these things through. And they may tease a friend or pick at their skin or their bodies or their bellies or whatever it may be. And I think it's really important to try to make it clear that in our homes, our kids can come to us and tell us if something's happened so that we can try to support them, make them feel better. We want them to deal with that negative feedback in a positive way. We don't want them then to come home and make a commitment to stop eating or to stop eating all sweets or sugar or bread or carbs or whatever it may be. So we want to try to deal with what are almost inevitable parts of our childhood and adolescence in as positive a way as possible by countering those messages.
And as we are moving into a lot of other nutritionist advice on being vegan and gluten free, so I think there is a certain amount of obsession coming, that we cannot eat this, and if we do eat this we are going to get a reaction to it, and you're sort of creating a lot of fear into your system. So like you said, we're not born with this. And so what should we do through life to empower our kids rather than create this sense of fear all the time?
We really want our kids to trust their own bodies. And so unless they have a food allergy of some sort and need to avoid a certain food, we don't want them to feel like certain foods are bad or certain foods are completely forbidden. yes, buy mostly nutritious foods for your home. Make them more accessible, make them more available, offer those to your kids. But if you're at a party and they're going to have some cake or some juice or some soda or whatever it is, that's fine. Don't make a big deal about it. And if they want to have 3 pieces of cake and you know that's not a good idea because your child is small, sometimes it makes sense just to not fight that battle. And
Right.
when they have an upset stomach, then they will learn on their own, right? Instead of you saying no, let their body tell them what makes sense for them, and then they will learn, right? So many of these messages about food and diets have the really, really unfortunate and pretty serious consequence of leaving all of us feeling like we can't trust our own bodies,
Yeah.
right? But we have hunger and satiety cues for a reason. And if we're hungry, we need to eat. And if we're craving something, oftentimes those cravings come from depriving ourselves of
Right.
certain foods. So we need to be cognizant that, we can't just avoid food. We need food to live.
And how we have, as we've seen in disordered eating, so you're sort of controlling your body or your image or things around you by controlling your eating. A lot of anger is suppressed inside yourself. uh, in terms of how would you explain that in terms of body image? What is the cognition of the teenage mind? What are they fighting? Is it that they're fighting against the world? Are they fighting against themselves? Because it seems like so much pressure that they go through.
Yeah, I think that, there's no simple answer. I think that, um, growing up has its challenges. It doesn't have to be difficult or traumatic, but it has its challenges, of course. And some of those things we grow out of, some of them we don't necessarily. I think that young people who are restricting eating or engaged in disordered eating behaviors, sometimes they're just copying what other people in their home are doing.
Right.
Sometimes they're copying what their friends are doing. Sometimes they're, seeing influencers on social media or
Yeah.
celebrities engage in these behaviors. And they just don't simply understand yet that that doesn't mean that they're healthy, right? Just because other people are doing it doesn't mean it's a good idea. And there's so much misinformation about food and diet and bodies in the media that it's hard to know what is fact, what is evidence-based. And that's why I've become really passionate about writing these books and trying to educate people from the time they're young to be more critical of those messages, to not fall for them, because there's so many fads and so much information that simply has no medical basis.
And can you give us a couple of examples for our viewers?
Well, I do think intermittent fasting is a great example where people have been really kind of tricked by the clinical sounding language into thinking that, skipping meals or not eating for the majority of the day is healthy. I think that similarly, cutting out carbs has been, any kind of bread products or carbohydrates has been a trend that has been in existence, it feels like, for 20 years now.
What about dairy? What about cutting off dairy from your diet?
Yeah, I mean, becoming vegan or cutting out dairy. You know, Similarly, a lot of boys and men especially think that they should have extra protein.
Yeah.
That's also
Yeah.
a trend. So these are kind of related trends, right? Like, don't eat carbohydrates, eat lots of protein. And just the way that our body processes different nutrients, you can eat too much protein, and then you're just going to excrete it. Your body can't use that much protein. So it's completely unnecessary. And carbohydrates are really important. They're a really fast, easy, accessible form of energy for our bodies. And that's why, you'll hear about athletes carb loading, right? Because that's easy, fast energy. And if you're tired, then you may crave carbohydrates. That's because you're going to get energy from them quickly.
Right.
So I think that, this whole idea that there are some foods that are bad or good, some things to be avoided, it's just really been overstated by a lot of these dietary trends. And unless you have an allergy to something, some people have, an allergy to lactose or some dairy products. And then, of course, they should avoid them. But unless you actually have an allergy, then you should, really allow yourself to have all of these foods that's actually healthier for you.
And Doctor, I would like you to, tell us more about the work that you're doing at your lab. What are the findings that you see of, these issues, eating related issues today?
Yeah, we've actually been working on some body image research lately in particular. And we've been looking at how social media influences body image. And a study we just published, actually just came out in the journal Body Image, looks at middle school aged girls. So middle school in the States is about 10 to 14 years of age. So
Right.
these girls were about 12 on average. And their use of social media, so this is before most parents realize kids are using social media, but it turns out that about at least half of them are,
Yes.
and how that affects their body image. And we found that what seems, I think, to be most important and interesting in these data is that girls who are using social media to engage with influencers and celebrities and follow like beauty information, that those specific types of engagement with social media seems to be much more problematic than if you're just engaging in social media use at a young age to, message your friends or share a picture of your pet or whatever. That seems fine. That didn't, in our study, have a negative correlation with body image. So it's really the type of engagement that seems to be mattering.
So the more we are engaging in, looking at models and actors, the more the negative body image.
Right. So our friends and family don't seem to be as negative of influences, and content that is not about beauty or appearance is not as problematic. And I guess in some ways that's very intuitive, but there's been so much discussion in the last couple of years about, everything about social media being negative, especially to young people's development, that I think it's worth saying that, well, it's not necessarily all of it. So if you have a child or a teenager, you might want to attend to, well, like, what are they doing on social media? Not just are they using it, but then what are they doing?
So if you have the right amount of engagement on the right platforms, like you said, with your friends, with other connections, I think that should be fine for their mental as well as their body image.
That's what these data suggest so far, yes. And I think that that's important. And especially, as you were saying before, all of us have experienced lockdowns and a lot of difficulty staying socially connected across the pandemic. And that's especially important for young people as they're
Right.
forming more social bonds. And so we don't want them to not have that connection with others. We just want to make sure that they're having healthy connections.
Right. And when we talk about body image, we sort of become very harsh and hard with ourselves. And the whole idea about self-compassion, a trend that we are seeing picking up right now in psychology. Can you give us some thoughts about how to be compassionate with yourself while you're dealing with body image issues?
Yeah, I think so much of the messaging we receive is not just, like, fix yourself, do all these things to look better and to feel better and to be healthier. But then if you don't, there's something wrong with you. You're not disciplined enough. You need to, be tough with yourself. And in fact, some of the research that has explored this concept of self-compassion really suggests that being compassionate is much more valuable. In other words, be gentle with yourself, right? Sort of be supportive of yourself. Treat yourself the way you would treat a friend, not an enemy. And people tend to stick with health behavior changes when they adopt them with a mindset of self-compassion more than if they're hard on themselves, right? No one likes to be bullied by other people. And I don't know why we all decided that bullying ourselves was okay. But the research does not bear that out. And so I do think it's really important to just be kinder to ourselves. So if we're struggling with our eating, our body image, any health behavior, it's okay to acknowledge that, to accept that this struggle doesn't make us bad or
And,
abnormal.
and if I may ask, so what would be self-compassion towards yourself?
Yeah, I mean, self-compassion it's really about your mindset. It's about how you talk to yourself, right? So if you eat too much dessert one night, right, sort of a self-compassionate response would be to think to yourself, well, it was really delicious. I enjoyed it at the time. It's all right. I'll do my best not to do that every night, right? And sort of a bullying response would be, oh, you're so dumb. You're not disciplined. You can't do that. Don't ever do that again, right? And it turns out that that sort of more forgiving, more gentle response
Right.
to that behavior makes it easier then to stick with health behaviors.
Doctor, last but not the least, how would body image, what is the correlation that we see with body image and anxiety and depression?
Yeah, we see pretty high correlations with body image and anxiety and depression. So people who are more dissatisfied with their bodies are more likely to be anxious and depressed. There's sort of a chicken and an egg problem. We don't know always which comes first. It seems to be somewhat circular, so that people who are depressed or anxious often feel just bad about themselves in general. And that also means their sense of comfort with themselves, they're feeling good in their skin, just that isn't there for them. But we do see this sort of circular or reciprocal relation among these constructs, and it can make it really challenging to treat these issues
Right.
because they kind of cluster together and they're comorbid, but also that much more important to work on treatment. And someone doesn't need to have a really serious eating disorder. They don't have to have lost a lot of weight. They don't have to be suicidal to deserve treatment, right? People who don't feel their best, who are willing to either talk with a therapist or a psychiatrist, people deserve help. We all deserve to live sort of the best life we can in spite of the challenges that are inevitable.
And I think that's a very highlighting point because they are not really suffering with any clinical disorder. It does not have to be a full on anxiety or a depression or an eating disorder. It could just not being comfortable with yourself. And I think that part is very important to address. In terms of men and body image and men and mental health, where do you see the trend going?
Well, I do see some greater acceptance towards boys and men talking about and seeking treatment for mental health concerns, but we still have a really long way to go. That boys and men are just typically not socialized to be quite as communicative, to be quite as focused on connection. More generally, that's not just a stereotype. We have research to suggest that that remains true today. And then they're just not as good at asking for help, and they're worried about how they'll be perceived, right? It's not considered particularly masculine to ask for help. And yet, in order to have a really full, enriching life, oftentimes I would say most of us will need help. And so it's just a matter of where you're finding it and
And so,
who's the best source.
right. So, do you think the trend for men is equally getting worse as it is for the females? Because when people talk about eating or body image, I think the first thing that comes up is it's not me. It's more. It's it would be my girlfriend or my mom, or my sister. But they probably are fighting the same battle and calculating the calories as well.
Yes, we definitely see that. We definitely see that they may not be admitting the problem, but that doesn't mean it's not there.
And like you said, it's a very masculine thing. They don't want to be ashamed. They don't want to be humiliated. What would be some of the appropriate things for them to tell themselves, specifically for men or boys?
Yeah, I think boys and men need to tell themselves that it's okay to need help. Again, I think that the more we normalize help seeking as being brave, courageous, maybe even just typical, I think that that just goes a long way towards then other people accepting that. And it does start with young people also, right? Telling young people whether it be your kids or your students or your nieces or nephews, right? If you need something, you can talk to me. If you think a professional would be helpful, I can help you find someone. It's okay. This is really important, right? There are a lot of issues that if we allow young people to have resources either in their teens or early adulthood to talk to people and to work things out, that just means they have that many more years of their life where they're going to be feeling good.
Right.
And so we want to get on top of this or get in front of it.
Right. And just a last question I had is, does body image also talk about your height? Because we were talking about the weight, but there are a
Yeah.
lot of people, who say, I am very short and I've been bullied for that. And, that constant battle of, oh, I should have been tall and thin.
We do see that more among boys and men than women. So women don't seem to be quite as concerned about their height. There is interesting research, suggesting that height is a real asset to boys and men. And so their concerns about height are not unfounded. And yet it's pretty hard to change your height. So we, again, really need to work on acceptance and placing our values elsewhere. Right? There are just some parts of our appearance that are going to be difficult, if not impossible, to change. And so we need to value ourselves for other things.
And last but not the least, how would you define a healthy body image?
I think a healthy body image is showing respect for your body, doing your best to care for it, doing your best to appreciate and be grateful for the fact that your body allows you to live your life. Your body is the vehicle through which we experience the world, and to remind ourselves of that, right? It's not always easy, I think, given the social and cultural pressures we all encounter. But we want to sort of keep coming back to that, keep coming back to reminding ourselves that, hey, our bodies are pretty amazing. They do an amazing number of things for us, and it's just so important to take good care of them.
Thank you so much, Doctor, for being with us. I'm just going to highlight the books that you've written. The latest ones is Being You, the Body Image Book for Boys, which is, I think, your latest release. And also the Body Image Book for Girls, Love Yourself and Grow Up Fearless. I think that's a fantastic contribution to the world. I will put it up on our channels, on our Instagram page. And thank you so much once again for giving us this knowledge.
Yes, thanks for your time. It's been a pleasure to speak with you.
Thank you.